Okay, everybody, here we go. They are on their way in.
And even though you're working it out.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Romanucci, and on behalf of the Murray family, along with Javier Rodriguez and also Morena Fontana, I want to welcome you here today. And I cannot go without acknowledging the absolutely amazing support that Jack and his family has for all of you being here today. This is something that is extraordinary, and I know that we all appreciate it, especially one person, and that's Jack, because you brought his spirit in here today, and we thank you. So it was only a minute and a half. That's all the time that Elk Grove Village police officers took from their initial approach of Jack Murray, who was disoriented and he was slurring his words, to the time he was fatally shot by them. 90 seconds. The tragedy is that officers arriving on the scene acknowledged and they knew that Jack had a history of emotional distress and that those officers had available to them multiple non-lethal weapons and tactics, and they had undergone crisis intervention training. Yet, despite their resources, their knowledge, and supposed preparation, these officers failed to follow their training and did not utilize any de-escalation tactics and did not provide Jack with time, physical space, and ultimately the desperate assistance that he had called the police for. Indeed, the police discussed de-escalation tactics, but miserably failed to employ any single one of them. Now, acknowledgement of the diminished impairment by the Elk Grove Village Police Department demanded crisis intervention and not a full military-style police response that Jack got instead. A call to the police for help should never, ever be a death sentence. A call for help from someone suffering from a mental or physical crisis should never, ever be a death sentence. That someone in this case was Jack Murray. Jack was a son, he was a brother, he was clearly a friend to many. But what you don't know about Jack, more importantly, is that he was a humanitarian. He was a decent, good person. Jack didn't know it, but as soon as he placed that call to the Elk Grove Village Police Department, he placed his own death sentence. The betrayal of trust on the part of law enforcement that resulted in Jack's death is as troubling as it is tragic. Elk Grove Village Police Department had helped Jack with prior episodes of emotional distress, and when Jack called police on December 1st, 2023, he was clearly in a diminished or impaired mental state. He was slurring his words, he was unable to fully answer questions from the 911 dispatcher. Indeed, the dispatcher heard Jack's father, Tom, state repeatedly over the phone that Jack needed help, not deadly force. By definition, mental impairment or physical impairment is what's called someone who's in emotional distress. People who are in emotional distress do not act predictably. That's why they require crisis intervention. That's why they need time and they need de-escalation. Their words and actions are cries for help. And what is predictable is that police will shoot mentally impaired people like Jack Murray for not being quite right. In the days immediately following the Jack Murray tragedy, we heard from one Elk Grove Village resident who now has made himself an expert in this case. That being the Elk Grove Village mayor, who stated, quote, Elk Grove Village police officers who responded to the incident had a combination of crisis intervention team training, mental health training, and de-escalation training, close quote. Well, I ask, in those 90 seconds, did we see any of that being employed? That statement makes Jack's death even more tragic because officers on scene were trained in multiple ways that the mayor says that they were, yet chose to ignore each and every one of those things that he said that they knew. The mayor has now made himself a witness and an expert on policing, and we fully intend to explore all of his knowledge and opinions. So today, Romanucci and Blandon announces the filing of a civil lawsuit for the police shooting and death of Jack Murray by members of the Elk Grove Village Police Department. The complaint seeks to redress Jack's wrongful death and hold accountable the village of Elk Grove, as well as members of its police department for the numerous negligent decisions that both violated the policies and norms of reasonable policing and common sense. And this led to the withholding of any appropriate help or care that Jack rightfully deserved. Now, you'll hear from Jack's family, you'll hear from Donna, and she'll tell you that Jack was a type 1 diabetic. He was readily aware of the impact that disease had on his physical and mental health. Now, it's important to note that while not all people experience type 1 diabetes in the same ways, Jack experienced both physical and emotional distress with his diagnosis. In the past, Jack had routinely called upon the Elk Grove Village Police Department, asking for help when he felt as though his own health and wellness might be in danger. So what does that mean? They knew, they knew, they knew. But they gave him no time. Jack would occasionally check himself into the hospital for the same reason. It is the understanding of the Murray family that on December 1, 2023, Jack called police again, which ultimately resulted in 5 officers responding to the call, and within moments of their arrival, Jack had been shot multiple times, resulting in his death. In fact, as the complaint details, and we do have the complaint, the officer's body camera footage indicates their first approach of Jack was at 4:33 p.m., and by 4:35 p.m., officers called in for medical assistance because they had fired 5 shots at Jack. Jack was extremely disoriented, in emotional distress, and was stumbling and slurring his words. He was not able to hurt anyone, and the officers on the scene had helped Jack before and knew he occasionally needed their assistance in medical care. Jack was in the house with his parents. They felt zero danger. They knew that Jack would not harm anybody. They told the police officers. They asked for the help that Jack so desperately needed, but instead they got guns. Instead of following crisis intervention training and giving him time and physical space to de-escalate and assess the situation, officers instead decided to use deadly force. And they did, and it was deadly. Their decisions and impatience cost this young man his life and now forever changed the lives of his family and clearly his friends. And our firm, unfortunately, sees tragic outcomes like this way too often because reasonable police officers fail to manage calls involving citizens in emotional distress. And so now we seek justice for this family. It is of the utmost importance for all of us. And now I'm going to introduce to you Attorney Javier Rodriguez, who will discuss more details about the complaint.
Thank you, Tony.
Of course.
As we're all aware, the incident involving Jack happened on December 1st, 2023, outside, just a few doors away from the Murray family home in Elk Grove Village, with his parents watching in full view. The lawsuit was filed yesterday on May 29th, 2024 in the Circuit Court of Cook County, Illinois, County Department Law Division. Our civil complaint painstakingly details officers' use of excessive force on Jack, a known emotionally distressed person, and their failure to employ any effective de-escalation tactics to preserve Jack's life and get him the help that he so desperately needed. The Elk Grove Police Department and its officers had prior encounters with Jack. They knew this young man, and they knew or should have known that Jack would experience episodes of emotional distress. Though Jack's family continues to grieve the loss of their son, their brother, and clearly, given everyone here today, as we all continue to grieve the loss of somebody who was likely a friend, a family member, despite all of that, it is the firm belief of the family that no one else ought to experience the sort of loss that they have experienced and been forced to endure as a result of the actions of the Elk Grove Village Police Department. The plaintiff in this case is Jack's mother, Donna Murphy. She's representing both her own claims and those of the estate of Jack Murray as the independent administrator for his estate. The defendants are Elk Grove Village and 5 John Doe Elk Grove Village Police Department officers. The counts in the complaint include willful and wanton conduct for the wrongful death of Jack, willful and wanton conduct in the form of a survival action, battery resulting in the wrongful death of Jack, battery in the form of a survival action, and finally, an intentional infliction of emotional distress on behalf of Donna herself. The complaint demands a jury trial and asks that the jury determine a dollar amount for compensatory damages, punitive damages, prejudgment interest, and post-judgment interests as allowable by law and ordered by the court, attorney's fees, reasonable costs, and any other relief that the court believes is just and equitable in this case. At this time, I would now like to ask Jack's mother, Donna, to share a few words and express to you all how she feels about today. Thank you.
I'd like to begin by asking for patience as I read this. And yes, I did write this. I want to take a moment. Thank you for letting us know. Thank you for letting us know more. Thank you for letting us tell you more about Jack today. As we remember, I don't know. Okay. As we remain in grief and disbelief over what happened that day, we as a family never anticipated that Jack's cry for help would lead to deadly shooting and the loss of our 24-year-old son and brother. We are also standing before you today, screaming as loud as we possibly can. This is a catastrophic disaster. The worst thing that could happen to our family. Instead, the same people we expected to help took the life of a beautiful human being, Jack. Jack lost his life. We stand here in unity, asking for justice and change. Our Jack was intelligent, caring, always curious about learning new things, and an incredibly kind person. He was a student at Wright College, working towards his dream, wanting to help people in the medical field. His heart and soul was larger than life. However, he was in emotional distress when he called the Elk Grove Police Department that day. Elk Grove Police decided to make an extraordinary, hasty, and deadly decision that took the life of our son. And the way they did it should scare every one of you. This could be one of your family members or friends. Our son was only 24 years old. It seems the Elk Grove Village Police Department had so many other options. They could have chosen, mainly because they knew Jack and knew he was never harmful to anyone. Elk Grove Village Police had assisted Jack in times of crisis and past. What went wrong? Who decided to fire so many shots? This should have never happened. They took our son, our buddy, our friend, a large part of our life. They took Shannon and Ryan's brother, their friend, their confidant, and an emotional part of their life. The Murray family will be moving forward to find ways so this doesn't happen to anyone else. No one should be gunned down like what happened to Jack. People should be offered help, assistance, guidance before using deadly force. How do we all come together to stop this from ever happening again? How can we make changes so that our people and communities are safe? I'm asking our friends, our neighbors, to stand in justice for Jack, a means to lead our community and families to feel safe again. I am leaning on all of you to help us get there. All of you. Will our neighbors hesitate to reach out for help in their times of crisis after the killing of one of their own community members, our son Jack? We need reassurance for our community and that this will not happen again. This is a catastrophic tragedy. What could have been avoided? Could this have been avoided? Our family is demanding change in how Elk Grove Village Police responds to those crises and to those in crisis. We never want this to happen to another family, friend, or neighbor in our community. If our loss can help others, Jack would truly want that. We want to thank our family and our community for the love and support. We feel it, we believe it, and let me tell you what I say, it is holding us up. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. We'll now take a few questions.
So let me tell you how this is going to play out a little bit before we take any questions.
I do have some for you when you get.
Absolutely.
Say what you need to say, but
Absolutely.
I can pop it.
police officers and agencies love to talk about, oh, you gotta weigh the totality of the circumstances. When you hear this totality, there isn't anybody who will say that Jack should have died. But then again, they'll say, oh, we made a split-second decision. But where's the totality? You gotta pick one of them. And the totality says, because that's the law, the totality says none of us should be in this room right now, that Jack should be alive. Ma'am.
So how many times had police responded, or how many times had Jack reached out to police and they had prior helped him?
Numerous. So we're still investigating, we're still trying to get all the data from Elk Grove, but I can tell you, when I say at least 3 times, trust me, I'm underrepresenting that number because I don't want to give you a false high number. But numerous times, Jack had called Elk Grove Village asking for the same type of help. And they acknowledge it, they knew it, on the way there. They knew what they were getting into.
To add to that, I'll note too
You have
that,
to stand here.
thanks.
Thank you.
To add to that, I'll note too that in the moment that the first officer who responds to the scene is communicating with the 911 call taker and dispatch, they incorrectly state Jack's name. They were unable to hear what his last name was, and immediately that one officer says, it's Jack Murray. So to speak to the fact that they knew who he was, they knew what sort of circumstances he was dealing with, it's a gross understatement.
What's the status of these officers? I know the investigation is still ongoing. Are they on paper? What's the status? And will you push to, once the investigation is done, will you push to have criminal charges filed against those 5 officers?
Well, we first of all, the answer is yes, we will push for everything. But as you can see, we had to name the police officers as John Does, because even though the mayor came out with this narrated movie several weeks after the shooting, talking about what happened, we still don't know who all the officers are in the scene. The transparency level has been 0 from Elk Grove Village. They were as transparent as they wanted to be when they narrated the movie, the edited movie that they put out about the shooting.
So you're saying the body cam video that was released, as well as the 911 call, that recording, those were not released in their entirety, they were edited?
Of course, those were edited. We don't have everything. That's why this lawsuit is so important, because in order for us to accomplish what Donna and Tom and Shannon and Ryan want us to do, we need to file that lawsuit. We need to get into the discovery. We need them to give us everything, because we don't have everything.
So this is filed in Cook County, in the law division, wrongful death, is that the basis of the?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's a survival component and also wrongful death.
Will you be filing in federal court?
No, this is a state claim right now. We are not pursuing what people refer to as a civil rights claim. We are filing in Cook County Circuit Court under a willful and wanton theory, which is the allegations that we have to make against governmental entities.
Is there any dispute, so to speak, that obviously Jack was in distress? He made that phone call. Those facts are not disputed at all. Did he have a knife, or did they? Tell me about that. I'm trying to figure out where
Sure.
There's a point where there are facts that are lining up, and then obviously there's a bit of a divergence.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? Okay.
Of course. Nobody is running away from the fact that Jack may have had a knife in his hand. The only reason I say may is because we haven't seen the evidence. We've seen photographs, we've seen some video of him holding something in his hand. We're not running away from that. That was part of his cry for help. Even though he was holding a knife, we told you, and they will acknowledge, and you even hear it on the body cam video, or maybe on the dispatcher's phone call, there was no fear in that household. Jack was physically impaired. You could see him limping down the sidewalk because he had just been injured the day before. And he had a knife in his hand. He was emotionally impaired to the extent that he did not know how to help himself. And so that's why the time was needed. Those officers had shields. They had full body shields. They had tactical gear on. They had tasers. They had pepper spray. They had batons if necessary. They had they even had the beanbag rifle. They had all of the de-escalation and non-lethal weapons that they could have had. What's the first thing that happened? Shoot.
You said that he was injured. What happened? Why was he injured?
Well, the family can give more information, but Jack had been involved in a physical altercation with somebody where he had been jumped. The night before. Yeah, it was the day before, the night before he had been jumped. And so he had injured his foot, his ankle. And so, incredibly, and this we do have on body cam or on dispatch recordings, and Javi can be more specific. Donna was on the phone with hospitals trying to find out the wait times in the emergency room so they could get Jack into a hospital. That's how badly he needed not only medical assistance, but also mental health assistance.
What do you say, I know that Elk Grove Village Police at least told us that they did tase Jack twice before, obviously, the shooting him.
Sure.
I'm just trying to be respectful of the family. I'm not trying to make it worse.
Understood.
You know, so what do you say to them who say, okay, listen, we tried to de-escalate, we tried to use these other non-lethal tactics here, and he's coming at us with a knife, and so we did what we had to do because we were in fear of our lives.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, the fear for their life is always the correct narrative justification that police give in order to justify using their gun and shooting. Now, what do we hear repeatedly? The taser was ineffective. So therefore, all that's left is gun. But they had a beanbag too. It doesn't mean that just because if the taser was indeed ineffective, let's just say hypothetically that their narrative is right. The taser did not work. Okay, does that mean you stop there? That you just take someone's life because this taser was ineffective? Which I don't know that it was ineffective. They didn't give him enough time. They didn't give it enough time. Shoot him with the beanbag. Break a rib. Don't pierce his heart. And everybody else in this room along with it.
And to that point, I would just note too,
Okay.
and to that point, my inquiry to the Village of Elk Grove would be this. Tell me why then too, it doesn't appear as though the beanbag rifle was fired until simultaneously to the firing of the handguns of officers or after officers had already used their handguns. Tell me why the evidence at the moment suggests that the beanbag gun is not fired until actual lethal force is being weaponized and utilized by officers at the scene. Tell me why too, the one officer with the shield at the scene is one of the officers who pulls out his handgun.
We'll just take another question or two, and then I think we're gonna wrap.
Just to that, I know you all don't have the identities, obviously, of those officers released, but is there anything you do know that you can share just about the years on the force, experience, how many officers did fire, things like that?
No. We wish we could. We would like to. And you know what? We will as soon as we can.
And thank God for the body cam footage.
If it's okay, and I don't want to say understand, that's not correct. I can see the emotion and the grief. But would someone talk about just Jack's journey with this type 2 diabetes and how difficult it was and how he was kind of battling, trying to stay straight and deal with, can someone feel comfortable discussing that and sharing that with us? Because I mean, it's a family thing, it's not just him, it's everybody, right?
So our son, Jack, had been battling with type 1 diabetes.
I'm sorry, I said type 2, I apologize.
Yeah, it's not type 2, it's type 1. So he needs that insulin in order to survive. I don't know how many people understand the difference between type 1 and type 2. If you're not being monitored with your pump, you go lows and you go highs, and then that can happen a lot. When you go lows, you of course get very lethargic, right? If you go highs, you don't realize the chemical imbalance in the brain makes you aggressive, can make you not hear what's going on, confused, right? Well, now you have a beautiful young man who not only has that health issue, right? But now they also have an issue of mental health where they've been dealing with since they were 14. Yes, since 14, the Elk Grove Police Department have known him. Since 14, 24 the day he passed. This is a long stretch. This isn't a month. This isn't 6 months. This is years, right? Right, years. Okay, so the part of the mental health and the diabetes, they actually, believe it or not, go very hand in hand. Because if you're not doing well mentally, you're not doing your medication well now you're in a big circle of disaster. You're mental, you're high on your sugars, you're not doing your mental medications correctly. So this can all make a very big storm. But I don't care how big this storm got here. I am telling you here today, they all knew Jack and our family by first name. Every single one of them, including who used to be at the time the chief of police. Why? Why? He never hurt anybody, not even his own family. Never. He only always cried out for help. It always happened. What went wrong this day? Why was it not in front of our house? Why was it down the street? Why were they calling him to them? Why? Nothing seems right.
Thank you. I think we're going to leave it there. Tony, is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
Yeah, no, I just, just to give you an idea, I alluded to the fact that Jack was a humanitarian. The work that he did for homelessness, for homeless people, he was a caregiver. This was a good person. This was a good person who was unnecessarily taken because the rules weren't followed. For family and friends that are here, I would ask that you stay for a moment, just because I want to come and thank each and every one of you personally. Okay. Thank you all.